I've wanted to.
Awesome. So again, thank you, Linda, for kind of that introduction. And before I do get started with tutor.com, Linda did mention some of the different things that we're doing for outreach. And I did want to highlight one of the big things that we're doing, like a huge push right now, is we're doing a geofencing campaign on social media, and we're trying to target as many parents and teachers and folks that we can to kind of inform them about tutor.com. So, for example, people are now going to be seeing on Facebook and Instagram advertisements about this resource and kind of how to access it and links to access the program. So we are doing our best to try to get the word out there as much as possible. Now, another thing before I kind of hop in, if at any point either of you have any questions, please let me know. You can kind of like interrupt me since it's a very small and intimate training. And then also, I know you showed the kind of like how-to guide for tutor.com earlier. Have either of you been inside the program at all or seen anything about it?
Have not.
All right. So then we will do this from a very like ground up sort of presentation. So as Linda mentioned, accessing tutor.com is incredibly easy. It is right on the homepage. It's underneath the featured resource, and it's been here for quite some time. We've been partnering up with the Discus program for, I think, just about 4 years now. So this has been on the homepage for a lot of that, but it's under A to Z resources, and by grade level, you can find it that way. Once you click accesstutor.com, as long as anybody is within the state of South Carolina, they will be able to access the program seamlessly. So most of the time, they shouldn't be asked a username or password from Discus. It does sometimes come up if people are accessing from their phone, if they're using a VPN or are in the bordering towns, just because some states share IP distinctions. But for the most part, everybody will automatically be brought in and they'll be brought to this main page right here. One of the things Linda did mention is that we do not require accounts for patrons, for students, for anybody trying to use the platform. They are not required to create an account. That being said, creating an account does give you a whole lot of things, extra things that you can do. But if people just want to connect with a live tutor, which is available 24/7, they can come in, click connect with a tutor now, and anonymously connect with any of our tutors in any of our subjects. The only real limitation that you have when connecting as what we call guests is you're limited to a chat only session. So you'll only be typing back and forth with the tutor. So you can still go through an entire session. I've done school visits to third graders, sixth graders, and 11th graders where they've all gone through a tutoring session using the chat feature, and they've had no issue with that. A lot of students are very familiar with these types of systems, but they can go through entire problems this way. Now, as you can see, connect with a tutor now, I was able to click that. Everything else is grayed out, and that's because you need to create an account to access things like scheduling a session, submitting a paper for review, or our wide variety of test prep resources. Creating an account is super simple. You just click any of these grayed out buttons, and it will kind of show like this. It will pop up saying you need to create an account. There's also in the top right corner a create account button, but you just enter in your first name, your email address, your password, and then date of birth, and then you can create your account. The date of birth is very important if you're working with young students in particular. If I showed that my date of birth was, let's say, September 2014, because I am, according to this date of birth, 13 years or younger, I'll have a restricted account, what we call a COPA account, because we do take privacy of minors incredibly seriously. And we are COPA compliant. So we basically scramble all of the account information so that it can't really be kind of found or it's basically all encoded. But that also means some of these features are not available because we can't see who we're returning papers to, for example, or who's scheduling that session. So there are limitations in that way. One of the things that we do recommend is if you're working with anybody who's 13 years or younger, and they want to have access to scheduling a tutoring session, dropping off a paper or math question, we recommend kind of letting their parents know about what we call parent accounts. So the parents will put their first name, their email address, their password, and their date of birth. So if I was doing my mom's, not to throw her age out there, but she would put 1960 as the date of birth. And then she can share that account with everybody within the family. So the third grader can have access, the eighth grader, and the college student can all use the same account and access all the resources and tools available. Are there any questions about the kind of creating an account process, what limitations there are, anything like that before I move on?
No, no questions.
All right, perfect. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and sign in real quick, and I'm going to pull up an account. So let's just put this in here. And as you can see, now that I'm logged in, all of the tabs are now bolded and black. So I now have access to all of them. Heading back over to connecting with a live tutor. In order to connect with the tutor, all you have to do is fill out this pre-session survey, and we try to make it as simple as possible. You choose the topic that you're struggling in. So we have all those core subjects, math, science, English, writing, reading. We also have a bunch of business courses, test courses. So if anybody's taking an IB course, for example, we have tutoring for all of these different IB topics and subjects. Flipping back over here, we also have computer skills. So if anybody is taking a programming course in high school, or maybe just in their free time, they're trying to learn how to do Java programming, they can connect with our tutors and work through whatever problems they're running into. Additionally, as we start to scroll down a little bit further, we have ACT, SAT, PSAT tutoring, even GED tutoring. So if somebody's taking a practice test, let's say, for example, Linda was showing that Learning Express library where there's a bunch of practice tests in there. If someone was still struggling with question number 3 on a GED practice test, they can come in, choose whatever subject it is. Maybe it was algebra, and then type in their question and connect with one of our tutors. And the wait time is usually about a minute or so to actually get connected. So it's a very quick turnaround. And then lastly, I also wanted to highlight we do have some resources available for parents. So not only can anybody connect to these tutors, it's kindergarten through it's K through 12, college and adult for all of these levels pretty much. But we also have study skills coaching. So this was created back when the pandemic first started and students were really struggling with like how to take notes in a virtual environment, how to actually study and manage their time on their own without a teacher being involved in that process. But even now that schools are back in session, this can be really helpful. Just kind of connecting with a tutor, talking about different note taking strategies to help them before they get to the actual learning process of a specific math problem or chemistry topic. They can learn how to better prepare. We even have options for time management, conducting research, which is incredibly helpful as they get to high school level subjects. And then if we go back here, we also have that for parents as well. So if parents want to get involved and learn a little bit more about motivating their child or using different resources or studying techniques to kind of help their child, they can connect to our tutors and work through those entire processes. But going to our normal tutoring topics, the subject I needed help with in high school all the time was chemistry. So if I needed help in chemistry right now, I would just choose science as the topic, chemistry as the subject, choose the grade level. And this is so that our tutors have an idea of who they're teaching, because teaching a ninth grader can be very different than their approach when teaching a high school, like a 12th grader or a college student who's taking a kind of general gen ed subject. You choose how you want to connect with your tutor. And again, because now I have an account that I've logged into, I can now do a chat only session or a chat in voice, and that will let me speak back and forth with my tutors. And then I can enter in my question and it can be as generic or as specific as needed. So with chemistry, for example, if I'm struggling on question number 3 of my homework assignment, I can type that question out. I can attach a file, maybe it's a PDF of the homework assignment, and then hit connect now. But if I'm struggling with just a general concept like covalent bonds, I can also type out here in the question box, I don't understand covalent bonds. Can you help me? The tutor is going to be able to bring in a walkthrough of what a covalent bond is, make sure you have an understanding of that concept, and then maybe even bring in a practice question that they have on their end. So as generic or as specific as the student needs, they can always connect to one of our tutors. And then again, once you fill out all this, you hit connect now, and in a minute or so, you'll be brought into our brand new tutoring classroom, which just for your information, we are constantly making updates to the platform to make it a little bit easier to use for students and to add functionality. So this past summer, we created this brand new classroom. It's fully interactable. Whatever it is that I draw, the tutor's going to be able to see and vice versa. We've added highlighters, so now you can highlight specific bits of information so that you can keep track of it throughout the entire tutoring session. For younger students, you can bring in some basic shapes and you can start labeling off the sides and you can do areas or perimeters of the shapes this way. And again, we have triangles, squares, rectangles, rhombuses, circles, all of the basic shapes that students will need in elementary school and middle school. Moving down, we do have a text editor, and this is really great for higher levels because they can type in an equation. I'm just going to type in high because I can't remember any equations off the top of my head. It's been a hot minute since I've had to do any. But they can then drag this around in the classroom. So again, it's easy to keep track of all the information throughout the session, and they can bring whatever it is that they need into the classroom. We also can change the whiteboard, which is what we're using right now, to a graph paper. And then we can start doing some simple plotting this way if needed. Switching it back over, we also can expand the whiteboard as much as needed. So now as I can scroll down, I can just keep clicking the expand button, and then all I have to do if I wanted to capture some information from earlier, I could just scroll up, find it. Maybe it was the highlighted information. Again, so we try to keep all that information in one spot for a single problem that patrons or students are working on. You can add in multiple different whiteboards. So let's say I'm working on 2 different problems and don't want to get that data conflated. You can add another whiteboard. And again, you can just kind of flip back and forth. All of that information is saved here. And you can create up to about 60 whiteboards. How many students will need to use that many in a single classroom? I don't know, but you can kind of keep clicking that button as much as you want. There's a lot of kind of space to do all these different problems. As I mentioned earlier, there are some coding languages that you can do within tutor.com. So if you go to code editors and then Java, for example, it will bring our code editor. You can copy and paste whatever code you're working on, put it in here and work on that with the tutor. They can highlight things and tell you where you might be running into errors. One thing to keep in mind is this doesn't, now my coding jargon might be a little rusty, but I think the word is compile. You can't execute any of the code in here, but this is just a way for you to be able to bring your code into the tutoring session. Then you can copy and paste that back out and put that into your compiler and run the code that way.
I wouldn't know if it was right or wrong what you just said anyway. You could have said
I'm
whatever
glad-
you wanted to.
I'm glad I'm in good company then, because I always get worried when I'm doing a training and I'm like, somebody might know something about coding and this is going to be so embarrassing.
You're good.
Perfect. So this is our graphing calculator. So you can do some basic graphing in the whiteboard itself, but as students start to take trigonometry, calculus, all of those stuff, they're going to need like a graphing calculator, like a TI-84 or TI-89. And we've essentially brought that into the classroom. So we have all of those functions that you might need in those courses. You can do sine waves, cosine waves, tan lines, all that good stuff. But a really cool feature about the graphing calculator is that it's powered by Desmos. So I'm not sure, have any of you been following the changes to the digital SAT that have been going out in the past couple of months?
No.
All right. Well, One of the big changes is previously in the SAT, people would bring in their own graphing calculator and use that. Since this is virtual now, the digital SAT is fully digital, they're going to be using an online calculator and they're going to be using this online calculator. So now students can kind of get a head start. They can learn how to manipulate data in here, where all the buttons are, so that when it comes time to taking the test, they're not going to be thrown into a frenzy trying to figure out how to utilize this feature. They'll already have an understanding of that ahead of time. Next, we have a whiteboard, and this is just how you create another whiteboard. You click that, it opens up another one. And then we have a word processor. So if anybody's working on an essay, they can bring a paragraph or two in here and work collaboratively with the tutor. The tutor is able to highlight things, underline things, type out some suggestions of what they might recommend a student does, but that can all happen within the classroom. Now, that being said, we do know that some students like to work on their own documents and they don't want to have to worry about copying and pasting back and forth. There is a share a screen feature that I'm not going to show now because sharing a screen within a sharing a screen doesn't look good half the time, but they can now share their screen and their document and work directly on their own machine and on their own document. So again, everything's happening in their own files, so they don't have to worry about losing any of that information or sending it back and forth between the tutor. It's all going to be local to their system. We also have the ability to share documents. So you can upload a file to the classroom, whether that's a Word document that a student's working on, a PDF of a homework assignment, they can do that. And then the tutor would have access to all of that information. But we also have what we added, and it's called a snapshot via mobile phone. So basically, it's a QR code that students can now scan, and then they can take a picture of their homework assignment, which most homework assignments now are being handed out on paper in the classroom, and it will automatically attach that image to the classroom. So students don't have to worry about scanning things ahead of time or typing out long word problems. They can now just take a picture and it will be in the classroom for the tutor to have access to. So we've done that to make it a little bit easier for a lot of students. And then those are the main features of the classroom. If you're having a chat only session, you'd be typing back and forth in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you had an audio session, there is the option right up top here where the microphone is. You just toggle that. You can connect your headset, built-in microphone on your laptop, or for folks who maybe don't have access to that technology, you can call in using a toll-free number and an anonymous PIN and basically turn your cell phone or your landline into a microphone to then communicate with the tutor. So that is also an option. We do try to bridge that technology gap as much as possible. And there are also actions. These are great for younger students to easily communicate without having to type back and forth, whether or not they're still confused. It basically shows an emoji to the tutor so they can easily keep track of that information. But there's also the option for tutors at the end of the session or whenever a student does something right to click great job. Confetti falls from the ceiling. There's a little applause normally. And this is just a great positive reinforcement for a lot of students who are struggling. They feel bad about not knowing certain subjects or certain topics. And this just makes it a little bit easier and approachable for students while in that session. It makes them feel rewarded for the work that they're doing. And once you're done with this, you just hit end session. I'm in a practice classroom, so it's not really showing up here, but it will be in this top right corner over here. And once they click end session, there's going to be a little post-session survey. Just provides us with information as well as the state as to how people felt about their session, if it was helpful, if they think it's helping their confidence, their grades, their schoolwork. We also keep track of comments that students leave. So the state gets access to all of those comments as well. But the most important part is if I'm accessing as a guest, normally my sessions aren't saved. If you log into an account, any session that you have logged into that account will get saved for me to review at a future point in time. If I'm accessing as a guest, though, I do have the option to email a transcript to somebody. So I can email the transcript to my mom. I can email the transcript to myself, maybe my teacher as proof that I am getting help outside of the classroom. And that's a way for students to kind of keep track of their own sessions. They can keep a record and have access to all of the information that they went over in that session, the chat, the drawings on the whiteboard. They can even like kind of watch this session in a like a video essentially, so they can keep track of all of that information. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. Before I move on to any of the other subjects, do you have any or topics? Do you have any questions about the classroom or what connecting with a tutor is like?
When a child goes into tutor.com and if maybe they're not technologically savvy, when the tutor comes on, will they be able to at least help them to be able to become familiarized with the things that they can and cannot use and utilize while they're there?
So are you talking about within the classroom itself or
Mhm,
within
mhm.
tutor.com?
The
Okay, yeah. So
classroom.
in the classroom, if let's say I was a third grader, and I
Mhm,
wasn't really sure how to utilize the classroom in my session, I could just
mhm.
type out, how do I use the classroom? The tutor would be able to see that and they'll be able to type and say, all right, in the whiteboard on the left side are the options for like interacting. There's a pen and they'll start drawing with the pen so that the student can see that. They'll maybe bring in like a shape so the
Mhm.
student doesn't have to actually know how to utilize the features of the classroom. As long as they can type back and forth at a minimum, they'll be able to work through whatever problems. Because the tutor can also just go through the entire process, showing all the work and asking the student what they think they should do next. So it's a guided experience. They don't have to worry about, understanding where the pen is, how to insert a new whiteboard. A lot of that stuff the tutor can take care of.
Okay.
Now, my question was, the tutoring session with, the option for, you can, I think it said voice.
Mhm.
I think it was like chat and then chat and voice.
Mhm.
Yes.
Is the chat and voice option only available if you make an account?
Yes, it is only available if you make an account and important clarification, if the date of birth when making the account shows that you are 13 years or older. Because again, due to COPA restrictions, we can't collect any identifying information of
Mhm.
people who are 13 years or younger. So all of that information gets scrambled, and as a result, you can't also have a voice session. So it is required that you have an account and that you are, above 13 years of age.
And that's where the recommendation comes in that you sign up, let your parents sign up for the account.
Yes, exactly. And then it becomes a family account. Everybody can utilize it, even the parents, because I didn't highlight it too much, but again, parents can access any of this stuff. We have career help for parents and even high schoolers, where you can connect with a tutor and like learn how to write a resume or a cover letter or prepare for an interview that's coming up. Everybody has access to this stuff, so parents can also utilize the resources within here, which is why we recommend a parent account because they will find something helpful on their own in here as well.
Okay.
All right. Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Mhm.
Not at this
All
moment.
right. Then before we move to scheduling, I did just want to mention we also have Spanish speaking tutors available. So if anybody in your community is predominantly a Spanish speaking, that's their first language, they can connect to Spanish tutors in math, science, social studies, writing, and those student success or study skills topics. And they can have entire sessions completely in Spanish, so Spanish chat and speaking in Spanish back and forth with the tutor. So that is also available. And then I'm not sure if you have anybody in your community, but we also have Vietnamese in much more limited hours. But that is an option as well. Flipping back over here. The next feature that I wanted to highlight, and again, everything else that I show you does require an account. But people can also schedule sessions. So some students need that consistency. Connecting when they like randomly doesn't necessarily work for them. They need to have it like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of the week. So students can now schedule up to 3 sessions at a time, and they just go through the different subjects. So let's say I was in calculus. I can see who these tutors are, hit schedule, see when their availability is. So if I wanted a session on the 20th, And let's say I'm a night owl, I have work after school and I'm not getting to my homework till late. This person, for example, is available very late at night. I can choose that specific time frame, choose what you want to work on. So I would go back to calculus, grade level, and then type out the question, and that session will be scheduled. When it's time to connect to that session, folks can log into their account. There will be a big green button, say connect now, and they'll be able to connect directly to that session. And as I said, they can schedule up to 3 at a time. So it helps with folks who need consistency, or for folks who really like a specific tutor, that is always an option as well.
And your sessions are 20 minutes long?
Yes, so for scheduling a session, you can kind of schedule those in 20-minute chunks.
If they
When
don't schedule a session but just kind of logged in, are they still 20 minutes long?
That's a great thing, a great question. I was just about to clarify that. The
Okay.
average session length tends to be 20 to 30 minutes.
Mhm.
That being said, there isn't necessarily a hard limit of like how long a tutoring session will last. The only like rare occasions where that should be happening is when tutors are running towards the end of their shift. And let's say they've had a 20-minute session, they only have 5 minutes more. That's when there might be a hard cutoff. But they will usually try to transfer that student to another tutor or instruct them on how to continue to get help. That doesn't happen very often, but it can occasionally happen. But I have seen in my time, and God bless the students that can manage this. I know it would be a lot for me, but they can have 3-hour long sessions with a tutor. So it can go as long as they need. Our tutors are guided and kind of trained to keep the session going and to try to get the student to a level of understanding within ideally that 20-30 minutes, because most students, once they get past that, it becomes a frustrating experience. They get stressed out and they don't really want to continue doing work for that long of a period of time. But yeah, does that answer your question?
Mhm.
All right, perfect. The next thing that I'm going to show off is submitting a paper for review. And let me go back here real quick. When you submit a paper for review, you can do kindergarten through 6th grade, 7th through 12th grade, and then we also have resume and cover letter drop off. And you just choose what you need help in. You type out the topic of your paper, where you are in the writing process. And depending on where you are in the process, you can highlight what you want your tutors to focus on when it comes to feedback. So for me, grammar, punctuation mechanics, and sentence variety, #1 issues when I was in high school. So I can specify that this is what I want my tutors to look at. But just because I've chosen these two options doesn't mean the tutor isn't going to be looking at how I'm supporting my argument or if I'm crediting sources correctly. They will still look at all of that, but they'll tailor their feedback specific to what I've requested. And then you just describe the assignment and instructions that your teacher has, and this is so that our tutors have an idea of what's required of you, because that can drastically change what type of feedback they're going to provide. Any citations that you're working or using, you choose your file, you upload it, and within about 12 hours, you'll get something that looks like this, where our tutors are going through a rubric, highlighting and color coding everything for you, and leaving some general feedback and linking out to different resources that we think might be helpful. So a lot of these resources are from proprietary resources that our learning management team is putting together. But let's say there's a citation guide that they know online that works really well for them. They can link out to that as well. And we go through the thesis statement, developing ideas, essay structure, research and citation, and then grammar and mechanics. Again, we go through all these, we rubric it out, and this can be a really great resource for students just to find out where they are in that writing process. But the biggest part, if we scroll back up, is the reviewed document. And once you click that, let me find it here. It will bring a version of the paper where our tutors will highlight specific passages within the essay and leave feedback in the comments on what they might want to change, what they're doing well in. Maybe it's a grammar issue. They'll leave some feedback there, kind of explaining that grammar issue and how to avoid it in the future. So this can be a really great resource, and our tutors are never actually making changes to the paper itself. They're always going to be leaving feedback in the comments because it's going to be up to the student themselves to learn from this feedback and kind of make changes on their own. And as you can see, the tutor is going through the entire paper, leaving feedback throughout it. Heading back over here, I'm just going to briefly touch upon it because you may run into it. I'm not sure what age range you tend to work with the most, but resume and cover letter, very similar. You fill out the information, what you want your tutor to focus on, who you are. So a lot of high school students maybe will put themselves as other, and then you copy and paste the job posting or announcement. And this is so that our tutors have access to things like keywords and responsibilities, because that can impact how they frame or kind of recommend changes moving forward. We have a similar feature for dropping off a math question. Students can drop off one question every 24 hours from Algebra 1 all the way up to Calculus. You choose your grade level, type out the question, you can attach that file, or even draw out the problem if it's something simple. We provide a short interactable whiteboard over here to do so. And then once you submit that question, our tutors will, within 24 hours, provide a walkthrough of that problem, both written out and visually, so that students have access to all of the work, and they can basically use this as a study guide for the rest of their homework assignment or rest of the questions that they have on their study guide, things like that. And you can even expand the whiteboard so you can see everything that the tutor did. So again, this is a really great resource if students have, 20 questions that they have to do by the end of the week and they're stuck on a specific type, they can submit this question, get a guide on how to answer those types of questions and use that as a reference. And this is really great for students who maybe feel a little bit uncomfortable connecting to a live tutor right away, because sometimes students will run into a feeling of judgment, whether that's asking questions inside the classroom, like at school, or kind of getting help outside. This is a great way to introduce them this in the essays as to kind of asynchronous. They don't have to connect or interact with anybody else, but they can still get the help that they need. Any questions about the drop-off features and resources in here?
They can drop off one question every 24 hours. Does that same thing apply for papers?
Great question. It's one question every 24 hours for math questions. For papers, they can submit it as many times as they want. Now, typically, they're not going to be resubmitting a paper until they get that feedback back. But let's say they're working on, good luck to the students, but 5 papers at a time. They can submit all 5 papers at once, or they would have to do 5 different submissions, but you know what I mean? They can submit 5 papers and get those 5 papers back with feedback and recommendations.
Okay.
All right. Any other questions before I move on to the other tabs tab? All right. So underneath the other tabs, we have a practice quiz module, where basically for math, science, and English topics, students can come in, look at dozens and dozens of different topics. So inequalities, 2 variable equations. They can take these quizzes. It'll do a pop-up quiz right here. And I'm making this full screen. I can put 3. Let's just answer a couple of these questions and get them incredibly wrong. Finish the quiz. I can review the answer, see what the correct answer is, see what my overall score was. And if I'm still struggling and I don't understand the question, the sum of 3 consecutive integers is 267, which I don't understand that question, I can hit connect to a tutor, and it will fill out this pre-session survey and link out to the actual quiz that I just took, so that my tutor has access to all of that information. So students won't have to worry about copying and pasting things into the classroom. They won't have to worry about losing track of that information, and it will all be within this pre-session survey. Heading back over here. So again, we have hundreds of quizzes in here. And for any students who are planning on going to the military, we also have ASVAB quizzes to kind of go over some of the topics that people can expect when taking that test. So that is also an option that is available.
Okay.
Next, everything that I'm going to show you, and I know we're coming up to time, so I'll try to get through them quickly with as much information as possible. Everything else that I'm going to show you is from the Princeton Review. So if you weren't aware, we are a sister company of the Princeton Review, the test prep company that has at this point like 40 some odd years of test prep experience. And that means we get to basically steal their content and give it to your students and patrons and everybody in your community for free. And this is stuff that normally they pay a couple $100s for out of pocket that they now have access through the statewide program. So the SAT and ACT Essentials, this is basically a full-length self-paced course where we have multiple different practice tests, a detailed score report that will show them what areas they're struggling in, and the actual like detailed explanations as to what the answers to the questions that they missed are. We also have video lessons and practice drills for each of these tests. And the SAT we actually just updated to be in line with the digital SAT. So there are brand new practice tests in there, new content available for all of your students. And in both modules, we also link out to different Princeton Review articles that might be helpful and useful for anybody who's planning on going to college. So things like what the top 10 college majors are at the moment, information about financial aid, and kind of what to expect going into that process. A college fair checklist, things of that nature can all be found within here. And for the SAT, since it's new, we have 4 practice tests available. But for the ACT, we have, I think it's 10 at this point. So there's a ton of content within these 2 modules for your students. I'm just going to quickly highlight it. We also have grad test prep for any of your very ambitious high schoolers that are like, I want to prepare for this right now, even though it's, 5, 6, 7 years in the future. They can get an idea of what is covered in these tests. We have practice tests and those video lessons and practice drills for patrons or students to access. Next, we have a video library for the AP exams. So from Calculus AB all the way through World History, we link out to Princeton Review videos on these topics. And these are, beefy videos. Some of them can be up to an hour long, just going a deep dive onto what the first month of curriculum looks like, or a test review, or just specific topics. There's a ton of information that can be found within this video library. And again, we have dozens of videos across all of these different subjects. And then the last thing that I wanted to highlight as a main feature is our early edge videos. These are predominantly made for late elementary school, early middle school students. They talk about the kind of foundational skills in math and language arts. So things like number families, simplifying fractions, solving percentages, these things that are going to be useful in everyday life as well as in later high school courses. But these can also be really great for any high school students who are falling behind. Maybe they don't understand these fundamental topics for math or reading, writing, and grammar. So they can come here, watch a video, and these are nice short snippets. So I don't want the volume, that was loud. Short videos that cover all these different topics. And as you can see, they'll walk through the entire process right here. And this can also be helpful for any parents who want to learn more and be more involved in their kids' educational practice, whether it's answering questions at home, working with them on homework assignments. If a parent hasn't been in school for a long time and they can't remember how to deal with, for example, solving percentages or fractions, they can watch this video, get a refresher, and then help their own kid outside of the tutor.com platform. And then just because I know we have 2 minutes left, I want to highlight when you create an account, as I mentioned, every single one of your sessions will get saved here. So you'll have access to all of that information, transcripts of the classroom. So any chat logs, all that saved, a video of the classroom so you can watch a math problem happen in real time, essentially, as well as screenshots of the classroom. If you had an audio session, you'll be able to listen to that back and kind of go through the session, listen to that conversation. Students can also favorite tutors. So again, if they would like working with a specific tutor, they can save that tutor, see when they're going to be available to work with again in the future, and even schedule sessions out with them. And then lastly is the locker, and this is kind of like the Google Drive of tutor.com. Any files you upload to the classroom or to our tutors get saved here for you to access in the future. And then you can access them from anywhere. So I can upload something at the school computer lounge and then download it at home or at the library. Now, that is a full comprehensive overview of tutor.com. I know I went over a lot. Are there any questions, specific use case scenarios, things you want to know a bit more about?
I can't personally think of anything right now, but that doesn't mean I won't have a question in the future. So, because it is
Yes.
a lot of information to comprehend. And so I want to not just having a basic idea, but how do we explain it to people who will be using it as well, so it can make it seem as user friendly as possible. And so, and then we want to also be able to share it with our community partners who are working with families and children, so that they'll be able to share and explain it as well. So I don't know, based on what you share with us, if it's best for them to say, hey, reach out to this agency to get an overview. Specifically, what I'm thinking about is Department of Social Services, where they're going to have lots of contacts with children and families, or whether or not that's something that we need to do. We'll give them the information for sure, but go ahead. I'm sorry, what were you going to
Oh,
say?
no. Sorry, not to interrupt. I just wanted to say, you can always reach out to Linda, and kind of work with her to schedule more of these trainings for different organizations. And then Linda, I believe we did a training or two for the Department of Social Services. Am I correct in that? Or was
Yes.
that a different department?
Yes, we did with
Yeah.
Shayna,
Was it
Charles,
for
and
on a state level, or was it like based on county?
I think that was open to everybody, but I know that there were a lot, like for how many people joined, there are a lot of people that like were not able to make it. But so we have done that, those types of trainings, and I think that was the terminology I might be incorrect on, but that those were trainings specifically for the people who are working with the students. But like trainings like that, we'd be more than happy to if you have specific contacts that you want us to reach out to schedule something that you think would be helpful. Linda and I can kind of partner with that and work to get those scheduled in the future.
yes, and if you would like to, I don't know if you could show the Discus screen. We can point out where they can go to training at the top, right there. And if they go all the way down to the bottom, we have the Discus training window there. If you want to click on that, that's where you can actually click on to submit a training request, and you can say, all the details you want. Just like earlier when you had submitted that original one, just to be able to say, we want this to be focused on our case managers or our, a particular group, or, we want, whatever you initially want, your first and second preferred time for the training. If you want to request somebody comes out in person for maybe a staff development you all are doing, or we have had foster care, we've had Department of Social Services, we've had juvenile justice system request. Some of them are live in person, some of them are even just one-on-one, and similar to what we're doing here today, because the initial staff want to know what it's about, and what really resounds with their particular community and user groups before they actually commit to doing a training, which is perfectly understandable too, if you want to do it that way.
Okay. So yes, definitely letting them know that the reason why I asked the question is whether or not they had access to this information, because that's like the state agency. For us, we're not the ones that will be responsible for training them, but making sure how to ensure that they get the information, so that we don't want children falling through the crack, and from not just knowing, like 25 years is a long time to have a service available, and a lot of people not know about it. So because we're finding out through our own research, and so working with the agency specifically, they didn't know about it as well. So, and it requires probably a lot of ongoing training with them because of the turnover. You may train with those set of people, And then later you have another set of people who are now working, who have no idea about the availability of the services. So we're just trying to see how we can just make sure that people know about this so children can get the help they need.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, but
Definitely.
thank you.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, thank you for the information. And so you probably be getting some calls. Hopefully you will. Or requests for trainings, because I think it's necessary. I do have a question. If there is a child, and I have just one child in mind, of course, who is in a school, you said schools know about it as well. What is your recommendation to, if a school doesn't seem to know about tutor.com, although they should, because you talked about having had those trainings, how do you ensure that if somebody says, Linda, this school doesn't know that you have this service available, do you reach out to them and say, hey, just want to let you know we have this available for them? What would be your suggestion?
One of the approaches that we're trying to take now, we actually started out working through the library media specialists, because they are familiar with the Discus program. They teach it a lot in their classes. They actually support their teachers in developing assignments around a lot of the Discus content. But what we're finding is being able to reach out to those counselors, the academic counselors, those that are working with the students with additional needs or concerns, that they may have things that they're actually struggling on within their own families. And in those conversations, they realize, oh, they're falling through the cracks with the math, and they really need support there. So we've begun trying to also reach out more to through the media specialists, but also to those academic counselors and career counselors. Even sometimes when we go out to the education and business conference, for instance, we have been able to really get a lot of training requests from those, and through that door, once they see they can do the jobs and the resume, tutoring and that kind of thing, they're seeing all of the other piece as well. So some of it is strictly word of mouth, but we are continuing to try to reach those groups. We are looking at another, we had actually attended the school behavioral management conference prior to COVID, and we're looking at that again as well, because that locks into a lot of different areas and professionals that need to be aware of it as well. Like you say, people that are even outside the schools per se, if they're counselors in psychology, in business, even in the business world. I always say that, tutor is for everyone. And even whenever I introduce things to even an after school program, I'll say, your own family, think about your own families. Think about somebody that is, struggling with math, or they mentioned at Christmas time, they're going to take the SAT or something like that. Just trying to continue to make people just stay aware. We even do that with our own state library staff, so that even if someone is reaching out to do a program at a public library, a puppet show or whatever, they are still very mindful of reiterating that piece as well.
Okay. And then we have your recording to go back to. Is there like the flyer that my coworker had here? Would that be something that you would normally give out as well, like the one that says KCSD students access to tutor.com free? Is that something that you normally give out to schools, individuals? What do you do with the flyers?
Yes, we do. So the two trainers that we have that go out, we actually have doubled our staff size in Discus office, so that we can reach more, because you're right, there's still so much more to be done to reach more. But we have on that training page, we post our handouts there as well, so that if you or Ms. Farrar maybe were working with a family or working with someone, and you wanted to just send the link by email, send the link to the handout, you'd be able to do that. If you want to send the link to maybe one of Maxine's videos or webinars that she's provided in the past, you would be free to be able to just copy that link and put it, send it out to someone as well that way.
Okay. All right. You have a
Okay.
question?
Yes, the student that we've been working with, who I found the flyer here that Donna just showed, is actually homeschooled. And so I just wanted to make sure, was there any, I guess, changes in access to resources for children that are homeschooled, or, or
There,
Oh, oh, sorry, go
oh,
ahead.
no, I was just gonna say for tutor.com specifically, there shouldn't be any
Mhm.
change.
Okay.
Because again, the way that we are authenticating is by kind of IP address and whether or not it shows that they're from South Carolina. If they are like, because again, sometimes in bordering towns, I know in other states that I work with, it'll show that let's say I'm in Alaska, it's saying that I have a Washington IP address, which would
Mhm.
then pop up that login screen that Linda was mentioning, where you have that username and password. And then once you enter that, you're into the program. So really, there shouldn't be any change in access. It should be
Okay.
fairly seamless, at least on the tutor.com side. I'll let Linda talk about some of the many other resources within Discus.
Thank you.
Yes, there shouldn't be any problem there with homeschool versus, because we also go into the independent schools. We work with homeschool associations. We do conferences with those. We've actually worked with some of those at Kershaw County Library, Public Library, actually as well, that do homeschool programming. So we do try to get you know continue to get the word out there. They will, as Maxine said, they will follow that same annual Discus username and password that I had sent in that original email to you all. So there shouldn't be any difference at all, as long as they, are in South Carolina, actually a South Carolinian here.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
I don't have any more questions. Did you, Sheila?
That was it for me.
And it's recorded.
Yes.
So that's helpful.
Yeah.
So thank you
Alright.
so much, Maxine, and for Linda, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Of course.
And we'll do
And
our best to ensure that we get it out to the families that are in need of the services and to the agencies that may not be aware that you have this available to those that are in South Carolina.
Yes, and I also wanted to mention, in your resources, like on your website, if you've got, family resources that you want to share, or you could mention Discus there. We could also, we're also trying to work with the Department of Ed to try to get more visibility, with different subgroups, because there are so many different layers of Department of Ed where, we could reach out as well after school. The after school associations, as we said before, even with the foster care, and that. So just trying to really continue to roll out, just have that visibility so that people aren't sort of stumbling upon it. Unfortunately, as you all did, but I guess fortunately, you did reach out to us, and we really, really appreciate that, because yeah, that's where they really need it the most, because people cannot afford, to pay a tutor
Right.
every time their student needs help. And I'll have to tell you, whenever Maxine mentions some of the comments that the students add, I had recently marketed several of our webinars, and some of the comments that the students have made about, thank you for your my tutor was very patient, and it's just they really are having very positive experiences. I even saw someone in the grocery store one time that they were talking about, they were struggling with their Spanish, and they were about to drop the class, and it ended up that they connected to tutor.com. It was just something about conjugating one, understanding one piece, and that got them redirected just enough to get back in the game. And that's why this tutor.com really is a game changer.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. This is good information. So thank you.
Well, I'll be following up with you also, and I will I'll be glad to tailor an actual handout for you all that you all can either have in a, a digital format or paper, either way, to be able to also share to your community.
Okay, all right, that's good.
Yeah,
Thank
that'd
you.
be
We appreciate
wonderful.
that.
Well, thank you,
All right, we're good to
Maxine.
go.
And
All right,
thank you.
enjoy the rest of your day. Yes, have a good Friday. Enjoy the rest of your day.
All right,
Yes,
y'all.
you too.
All right. Yeah,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Goodbye, Sheila.
Bye.
Goodbye. Thank you, Maxine. I'm going to go
Yeah,
ahead and
of
turn off
course.
um
The recording.
the recording so I can get back
Mhm.
to more here.